To Oracle. Hello, welcome to Oracle tutorial, and today we're going to continue a little bit on the procedures or stored programs which we were doing last time, and we'll take some more new topics. So some of you have emailed me with a question saying that in which situations we have to write procedure, or what really stored procedures would enable which cannot be done with simple queries. I think that's a good question. So here we've got a very simple procedure, but really in the real life procedures are much more complex than just like this. So typically they would, let's say, have so what I'm trying to say is, it involves complex process and which you cannot do through SQL in a simple one-line query. So that's the reason you have to use stored procedures. What are the other alternatives? Well, other alternative is depending on your application environment. Let's say if you have developed a PHP-based application, then you can fire. So you can, from PHP program, you can fire a query and then get results back, and then do something, and then again fire another query and then get results back. So that's sort of not as efficient as putting the entire logic in a stored program, because then in your PHP's case, if you're putting stuff in PHP, then it has to interact with multiple times with the database. So there would be a network traffic. Whereas in this particular case, the entire program is stored within the database, so it will be much faster. So that PHP call one time, and then it will get the result at the end. So definitely, if it involves a lot of database calculations and different tables, then it is a lot more. It makes more sense to create a stored procedure and do the entire thing within the database. Maybe the things where PHP or C program would make sense, where it involves a lot amount of calculations, but not really within joining tables and etc. So maybe one example is that maybe let's say you are trying to create search indexes or something like that, or ranking of. So you get a list of, let's say, 1 million records from the database, and then do some file processing within your C program to calculate. So this, and if that calculation doesn't involve any more database calls, then you're much better off doing within your C program or PHP or whatever is it, the Java program. So that's sort of, I hope that gives you a good idea of where you need to do stored procedure and where you need to do, where you not to use the stored procedure. So having said that, let's say what else is left in stored procedure. So we will discuss more into stored procedure. But that's more PL/SQL programming, and we'll devote few videos on the PL/SQL programming. But basically, stored procedure is really essentially PL/SQL programming, and you have to learn the PL/SQL language to really do a way to create stored procedure. So at this time, I will just introduce you with different database objects within Oracle, and then later on, maybe do PL/SQL, where you learn more about the language which are used for creating the stored procedure. Okay, so our next topic is function, but before that, let me just go over once quickly how we did the stored procedure call. So as you see here, last time we used this. Now what you hear is this particular call. It's called anonymous PL/SQL block. As you see, it is not just like a one query, but it is a set of programs or a set of statements. So when you have set of statements and you want to execute it as a block, it's almost like a .c or a C program. You think like that, a regular equivalent, which is a set of executable statements. So that is called within Oracle, that is handled through a PL/SQL block. Now in our stored procedure also, what we wrote here is PL/SQL block. This particular one is a PL/SQL block, which typically has a begin and end. Now the thing is that when you create procedure, it gets compiled and stored within the database as a compiled executable. Whereas here we are really not compiling, we are running it as a what is called anonymous PL/SQL block. What really essentially that means is that you can think this is some sort of like a script file, like a Python or Perl script, where Oracle takes this block and then sends it to a PL/SQL engine. It gets compiled in a runtime and then get the output. So when you try to execute a procedure, if you see, right, if the procedure accepts a variable, let's say for this particular procedure accepts the output variable, then you have to define it and then you have to pass it. So the way to define is that you have a declare block, and then the way to call the procedure is just the procedure name and the parameter. So that's hopefully gives a good idea about how to define a stored procedure and how to call. Now next topic is functions. So functions are really, you can think these are similar to stored procedure, only difference is that like a stored procedure takes an input and output parameter. Here functions really takes only input and returns an output. So let's say if you have to define is as a function, so let's say I have to define this something like this. So and then so let's say we'll say, so this is our function I have created. Now as you see, I have put some more statements, so let's go over. So the main difference with the function and the procedure, as I've told you, is it does not take an output in the parameter list, but it returns one. So you're taking an employee ID input, but it returns the virtual. So what that means is that when you call the function, you have to put like a variable. You have to assign the output value to a variable. So that means it's something like get emp name fn, let's say 1, something like that. If you're calling it from a stored procedure, if you're calling it from a query, it will be different. But anyway, so it is returning a function. It is returning a certain value, and you have to always define what is that output value. So this is sort of, you can think you're declaring it. You're declaring the function with the input value int, and if you can notice, unlike procedure, it doesn't have in or out, because whatever is in this thing, it's always all input variable. So now, and you're mentioning here return this, meaning what is the data type of the return value. Okay, now here your main body of the function block. So I'm defining a variable this with a virtue2, and then I'm using that variable to put the value, and then I'm returning it the employee name with a certain thing. Now here I have something called what is called exception. So it's similar to if you have done C programming, it's similar to try and catch block, where you're catching the exceptions. Now I have got two exceptions. When no data found, then this. What that means is that if there is no data with the particular employee ID, then you raise this. So what raise application error meaning, you're associating that particular exception with a code, and you're displaying this value, and then anything else you are displaying something else, and you are passing this SQL code and SQL ERRM. These are actually system variables, and if any exception occurred, Oracle internally puts the code and the value here. So let's go ahead and compile it. Okay, so it has compiled, and then we are calling a function. Now see, we can call, the nice part of the function versus procedure is that function can be called from a query. So here we are passing we're calling a query, and instead of getting the emp name from the table, we're just using these functions. Even though in real life but I think just for this example we are doing it. So as you see, the output is id equals to 1, and then the name is value from function is David Smith. So we are using this function to that. Now if you want to call it within a procedure, you would define a variable like this, do get emp name. So we'll cover some of that maybe in our next video, how to call function from a stored procedure. So I think that hopefully that gives you a good idea. Now if some of you, if you're a little bit confused about the exceptions, don't worry, we will cover these things in detail when you do